Now, Ducati motorcycles are traditionally known to be top grade when it comes to handling, performance, and in-your-face styling, and a bit of a pain in the backside when you actually get down to riding them, as a matter of fact. So then, why does a motorcycle like the Diavel even exist? Because, well, with the wide handlebar, low-slung seat, the whole cruiser kind of take on the whole motorcycling aspect, it tends to drift away from what Ducati traditionally stood for in the first place. Now, the year is 2024. This is the Ducati Diavel V4. It's got 2 more cylinders, Ducati Diavel 1260S, all new chassis, all new dynamics, upgraded features, all new machine. Why does this bike even exist in today's world? We're about to find out. Now, as with any modern day Ducatis, the Diavel V4 is an absolute visual delight. It appears to uphold Ducati's oath to providing our drab world with some of the best looking motorcycles around. Yes, skinny, light and efficient EVs are the future, but this right here is a modern work of art. You can't help but admire it. Double C LED lights up front look great. Better still, the bespoke tail lamp design and shape which gives this bike a distinct identity from the rear. Of course, it looks fantastic, might even be a pain to clean when the muck starts flying about. But still, the Diavel V4 retains some of the signature features of the older generation Diavel models, like the single-sided swing arm with that massive rear wheel and tire. Well, this one is a 240 section Pirelli Diablo Rosso 3 on a 17-inch rim, which will even put a lot of modern-day sports cars to shame. Still, a lot has changed all over this bike. The front now looks a lot more tightly packed with those massive air vents hugging the front fork, and you don't get to see that trademark Ducati trellis frame anymore. Well, that's because they've done away with it and instead employed a cast aluminum monocoque frame which uses the engine as a stressed member, and this has also helped reduce the overall weight of the machine. Now, the engine itself looks a lot like a big block of metal, and it doesn't have those neat machine touches of finesse that the older L Twin had. So the Diavel V4, really striking in terms of design. The front has this nice, bulky, chunky, very muscular look about it. When you actually get on the bike, it doesn't feel as heavy though. And I really want to focus on the rear of this motorcycle because there are a couple of aspects which kind of go unnoticed. Design-wise, for instance, I really like the way these the foot pegs for the pillion rider kick out, and you can nicely fold them back in and it goes nice and flush with the entire design of the motorcycle. You have a nice cowl for the rear pillion seat as well, which you can remove if you want to have a pillion aboard. And you can also extend the grab handle by pulling a small lever under the seat. And as a whole, if you don't fancy having a pillion, everything fits in nice and flush, and it looks a lot more neat and tidy without a pillion on board, because that essentially, according to me, is the way this motorcycle was designed to be. Of course, the quad exhaust pipes, great looking, look like a couple of rocket launchers, ready to go to war, awesome. And the single-sided swing arm, that big chunky rear tire, great to look at, give the bike a lot of presence and just reeks of masculinity, according to me. And of course, there is some functional aspects to the aesthetic side of it as well. For instance, you have a nice heat shield out here, which protects you from getting your undersides of your thighs and your legs cooked if you're stuck at a signal after a long ride, or while you're on a long ride also. So a good mix of functionality and aesthetics with this motorcycle. As you would expect with any flagship Ducati motorcycle, this one too pretty much has the kitchen sink thrown at it in terms of electronic aids and features. So you have 4 ride modes, throttle maps, launch control, traction control, wheelie control, cornering ABS, the works. The 5-inch display readout is quite dense with information, quite like with the multi-starter. And it's also easy to toggle through the list once you're actually accustomed to it all. The best part is that the Diavel also gets a fuel level indication bar as well, something that the sportier Panigale and Street Fighter V4 models don't get. The Brembo Stylema brakes give this bike some serious stopping power, and if anything, the only thing this bike misses out on is the semi-active electronically adjustable suspension. Of late, Ducati appear to be loading most of their flagship models with the V4 engine, which is never always going to be a bad thing, even though these new 4-cylinder engines employ the traditional valve spring tech instead of the manufacturer's famed desmodromic valve train system. The V4 engine in the Diavel isn't the full-blown high-performance version of Ducati's motor that features in the Panigale V4 and the Street Fighter V4. Instead, this one gets the 1150cc Gran Turismo V4 from the Multistrada, which produces 168 PS and 126 Nm of max power and torque. Now this motor is more inclined with mid-range performance and high-speed touring. The motor features a counter-rotating crank which helps in the handling and agility of this bike, and like with the Multistrada V4 Rally, well, this one even gets cylinder deactivation tech, which shuts down 2 cylinders at the rear when the bike is at idle or under 4000 RPM in first gear, basically to reduce heat and fuel consumption. As with the older Diavel models, this one too stutters off the line and you'll have to be on the gas a bit to avoid stalling the bike like an amateur rider, thereby tarnishing your reputation and street cred with onlookers. A good thing about this V4 model is how the 220 kg dry motorcycle doesn't feel exceptionally heavy or a task to manage at slow speed. It slow speed turns and maneuver fast traffic a lot better than the old model did. Sure, the engine did feel a bit gruffy at low revs, but it's ready to rock and roll post 3000 RPM. The top 2 ride modes, Sport and Touring, give you complete access to the 168 PS of max power on tap, while the other 2 let you play around with a more humble 115 PS. And the difference here is all there to be felt not only as soon as you set off, but also at the top end of the power band at around 10,750 RPM, when you want to extract every bit of performance and oral joy from this devilish machine. Speaking of which, the stock exhaust note on this bike doesn't sound too bad at all, but if you want to really raise hell, well, you'll want to slap on that add-on Akrapovic kit. Now, there also is a bit of high-pitched engine whine high up the power band, which sounds absolutely brilliant. The new Diavel gets a 6-speed gearbox with bidirectional quickshifter, but I should say that the shifts from first to second gears aren't the smoothest. Anyway, that's just low down the gearbox and you can move past that. Something that you can't, which is constantly annoying on this motorcycle, are this bike's mirrors, which are almost impossible to set up right. Anyway, let's move on to the ride and handling aspects for now. The handlebar is nice and wide, which gives you good leverage over the surprisingly light front end, and the bike feels very agile once you lean it into a sweeping bend. Feedback is good, and of course, it isn't as sharp as the other Ducatis that are built to take on the streets, but leaned over, this one will hold its line a lot better than before. The revised logos will have you seated mostly upright and a bit stretched forward, while the foot pegs and controls are mid-mounted, unlike on most other cruisers which have them more set forward. But everything feels well within reach on this motorcycle, and it's easy to have both feet flat on the ground while seated. Now, the taller you are, the more you'll want to throw on some aftermarket pegs on this bike to get your feet angled just right. The turning radius of the Diavel is quite commendable given this bike's visual bulk, and the shortened wheelbase helps this bike in matters of agility as well. It's when you're riding solo that you'll mostly feel that this bike was meant to be ridden hard and fast, and then there are times when you have a pillion aboard, or you're simply thinking, alright, let's have none of that, let's take it easy, make things comfortable, and well, the Diavel V4 is up for that as well, and that's the commendable bit about it. Sure, the Diavel V4 looks stunning, and the best part about it is that it does more than what you visually expect from it. Now, compared to the earlier 1260 model, this new flagship Diavel V4 model definitely looks a lot less elegant than it did before, but a lot more menacing, villainous, and diabolical, especially in this black color, according to me. Looks great. So, it also happens to look a lot more performance-focused or performance-oriented, and that, in actuality, is what it actually is. Because, well, that's what the engine does. The new chassis, the way the electronics, it all comes together. Well, it is less of a cruiser motorcycle and more of a performance motorcycle. It's a lot more agile, and it gives you a good mix of what you want from a Ducati in terms of performance, handling, dynamics and all that. And it is one of the most comfortable Ducatis you can actually get your hands on today. But it also is one of the most expensive, because at 26 lakhs ex-showroom, well, that's the cost that you'll have to shell out for this kind of motorcycle. And on road, with all your taxes and everything, it does work out to north of 30 lakh rupees. Coming back to the original question, why does this motorcycle even exist in today's world? Why did Ducati build it? Well, to simply put it, because they can and they have, and that is absolutely brilliant. Because at the end of it, it is a motorcycle that is meant to give you pleasure, joy, put a big smile on your face, be fun, exciting, and it is all of that. So, kudos Ducati.